Hello, friend.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just not get mad? If people being rude or irresponsible or dishonest or whatever, if that was something that you could just let go of and still be able to make progress in your own goals, your own responsibilities, your own duties. Because recently I have had opportunities to practice exactly that. And with this video, I want to talk about how I quit my job recently and what I was going through with that and what I learned in the midst of all these messy situations. Welcome to Philisol. My name is Ollie. By the time this video is up, it'll be about a week or two after I film it and about 2 months after I quit my job. And I'm probably going to be making 2 or 3 videos talking about some of the lessons I've learned with quitting that frustrating job, because there really is a lot and it's been super valuable for me to hold on to it. These lessons have really helped me make a very smooth transition from quitting this job, leaving that toxic environment, and healing from all the very frustrating things, the very many frustrating things that happened at that job. So today what I want to talk about is, to put it simply, you do not have to get mad when something bad happens to you. I know this seems a little weird, but hear me out. It is so common and normal in our culture to get upset when something bad happens. I mean, it seems very natural, right? But think of it this way. Does that serve you? Does that help the situation? Does it help you do whatever you need to do to fix the situation? Generally, the answer is no. And you've probably heard before how important it is to be deliberate with your mental state, to take control of your mental state, to be conscious, and that includes your emotional state. And it's very common today for us to live in a very reactive state rather than a proactive state, right? When it comes to our thoughts and our feelings. And what I mean by that is to not be proactive by taking control, choosing how we want to feel and respond, but being reactive and just kind of letting ourselves respond and feel according to our habits or whatever. But what does that really mean? It means that you are not controlling yourself. You're not controlling your life. It means that you're giving up control of yourself, your life, your feelings, your contentment, your actions. And you are giving control to how your mind, your habitual mind, causes you to feel about things that are outside of you, external things, which means that you're giving up control of your life to everyone and everything around you. Putting it that way makes it seem pretty ridiculous, right? Because it is. So let me talk a bit about what I went through with this job I quit almost 2 months ago. I'm going to leave names out of it. I'm going to keep the details fairly vague because I don't want to be the guy that just bad talks his past jobs or whatever. That's not what this is about. I just want to share some of the details of what happened so that you understand what I was coping with, what I had to go through, and kind of the lessons I had to learn and how I needed to get past these frustrating things. That's the important part here. So I was working at a convenience store that also had a fast food portion, and I was working in the fast food portion in the kitchen. And the location was new, and actually the business model for this fast food business was also relatively new. And to be blunt, the management literally did not know how to run it. I mean, literally, it was new, and they were actually using the location I worked at as a guinea pig for how to run these businesses in other parts of the country. They literally didn't know what they were doing. Growing pains abound. They cut hours very severely. At one point, for a little while, I was actually down to 5 hours in a week. And they wanted one person at a time on shift at almost all times. And I'm almost willing to bet money that you raised an eyebrow when I said that, because everybody else I told that to did. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize how ridiculous that is and realize that no fast food business can run with one person. And I definitely wasn't the only one who thought so. And the company, unfortunately, they had absolutely no problem taking advantage of their employees, not respecting their word, not honoring their word, and tiptoeing to the farthest reaches of legal requirements, or even just ignoring legal requirements entirely if they thought they could get away with it, which they did a lot, and that's one of the many reasons why I quit. Management just refused to acknowledge the fact that keeping one person on shift at a time just was not enough manpower to keep a clean environment and also make the sales and hold the standards that they want us to. I mean, it was like they were trying to pour 16 ounces of water into an 8-ounce glass. It just was not enough. It couldn't be enough. To work that hard, I mean, you would need Superman, and they expected us to work like Superman. And keep in mind, this whole time, I was told that I would be getting 30 plus hours in a week. For 3 months, I was lucky to get 20. And I worked there for 6 months before I quit, and so for half that time, I was making half the money that I was told I'd be making. Obviously, that's quite frustrating. And yet I was expected to work harder just because they didn't want anybody to have any support. And it's not like it was just me that was going through this, it was everyone there. But I would still work as hard as I could because the way I think, the way I was raised, that's what I'm there for, is to give you my best effort. But I mean, I literally didn't get a single break for 2 months. Because guess what? They don't want you taking breaks. I'm kind of going on and on at this point, but I hope you can see how it was just demoralizing and unfair and really frustrating and ridiculous. I mean, you know, you'd get in trouble if all the dishes weren't done, but you'd also get in trouble if you didn't make enough sales, but they didn't give you enough time to do both, because you're one person handling the whole dinner shift. I mean, it was, you know, it doesn't work. And it eventually all culminated when I got really tired of it, because it was really starting to affect the lives of my coworkers and myself, and by extension our families. And so I got very vocal about it, including the fact that they weren't following regulations, which honestly wasn't even the biggest issue, which is pretty sad. But thing is, management doesn't like when you point that out, because then it puts their careers on the line. So they got really upset about that, and I was yelled at, I was cussed at, I was belittled. I mean, I was harassed in a few different ways, and I talked about it more in my last week's video here, Have Some Hope. I really like how that one turned out, by the way. I really recommend it if you're feeling stuck or hopeless. But anyway, that was another lesson that I was inspired by the things going on at work. Very interesting. Anyway, but of course I didn't like that this stuff was happening and that I was treated that way. But I already knew that these people had incredibly low standards for how they conduct themselves, and I'm not just knocking them when I say that. That's actually a very important thing to realize. See, I already knew that these people were already willing to do these very irresponsible and toxic things and make those decisions. These people were not likely to change their minds. It didn't matter if I got upset, hurt, offended, or even if I used all the best logic in the world. They already made these decisions. They already set their priorities, and these decisions were likely due to ego or insecurity, which are kind of the same thing. Usually acting out of ego and pride is because of insecurity, or maybe it's simply because they didn't want to rock the boat and upset their bosses, whatever it was. But because of the way they acted, I'm able to simply say, that's fine. You made your decision, you acted poorly, you made a wrong decision, and that's fine. I'm able to just go do something better. You aren't good at what you do, you have low standards, I wouldn't hang out with you, I wouldn't hire you, I wouldn't work with you. And that sounds really, really harsh, right? And it's not like I said this to their face or anything, but I'm just acknowledging the reality of the situation. That's just the facts of the situation, right? It doesn't have to be an emotional thing, and that's the key here. I don't have to endanger my emotional state. I don't have to give them my emotional state and get angry. I can just acknowledge the toxicity in the situation and make the logical decision to not waste my time there anymore, because I can and will go do something better. Which, by the way, exactly 2 weeks after I quit my job, and I mean exactly 2 weeks down to the minute, it was the same time of day, I was on the phone with my would-be boss. He called me in for an interview, I went in that day and got hired that day. And I've really been enjoying my new job since then. But anyway, this attitude of holding on to your emotions, that can be applied to any bad, unfortunate situation you step into. Even just pure bad luck, stubbing your toe, whatever, right? It doesn't, you don't need to give up your emotional state. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it. I still give up my emotional state all the time. I do. But I'm practicing it, and I know it serves me when I hold on to it. Giving up my emotional state like that does not help me in any way. It doesn't help the situation. I certainly don't enjoy it. I don't like how it feels. And it certainly doesn't change their minds, right? They're not gonna, act differently because I got hurt, I feel bad. They already made the decisions to make me feel bad. Okay, me feeling bad isn't going to dissuade them, they're not going to be dissuaded unless they're truly disincentivized. And there wasn't really anything I could do to disincentivize them, and they weren't being disincentivized otherwise. It wasn't going to happen. And also, being disincentivized still doesn't really change their minds, right? What you're incentivized to do and what you actually want to do are still two very different things. I know that I act and I feel better when I don't give up my emotional state to this stuff. If I listen to my emotions and I listen to the emotions of anger and disappointment that I felt from the situation, the toxicity of the situation, I would have made worse decisions. I would have made decisions that were based in emotion, and it would have been very immature. It wouldn't have helped anything. But even the moment that I quit, I didn't cuss them out. I didn't spit on the floor. I didn't knock anything over on my way out. Even though all those ideas flashed in my mind for a moment, I didn't do that. Instead, I just realized that the sheer ridiculousness of the choices they were making, the things they were doing and allowing, it taught me that my time is more valuable than that, right? If I'm not willing to put up with their low standards, their toxicity, that means my time is more valuable than that. It's more valuable somewhere else. I don't need to fight against them. I don't need to give them control of my emotions. I can just walk away. And that's what I did. I left the building, and I can look back and I can confidently say that I handled things in a moral and mature manner. And I didn't give them anything they can use against me. They cannot truthfully say that I threw a tantrum, that I wronged them in some way, because I know I didn't. I acted in a mature, moral manner. I didn't listen to my emotions. I just made a decision. I just don't need to be here. I can go somewhere better. And they have nothing they can say against that. I handled myself how I wanted to handle myself. I didn't let them persuade me into being immature, emotional, whatever. And that doesn't mean that I didn't have to work through some emotions. Of course, I felt frustration. I felt it. It bothered me for a few days after, and it bothered me the entire time I was working there. And it's not wrong to feel these emotions. What matters is how we handle them, how we work through them. And keeping that in mind made it way easier to actually cope and heal and move past this stuff, rather than just holding on to the emotion, letting it keep bringing me down, letting it keep on making me feel worse. I was totally over it in less than 2 weeks. And I mean totally over it, as in within 2 weeks, I would literally have entire days where I wasn't even thinking about that job and how I was frustrated there and how I quit. That just wasn't a thing. That's a big deal for me in my own development. I was conscious about how I felt, and I made the decision to move towards being that person who doesn't give up his emotions like that. And it made me a much more powerful person. I was able to continue my life. I was able to be productive and make videos and make healthy decisions, and I started my new, better job 2 weeks later. And, I didn't let all those people and events have power over me. I was more powerful than that. And, that this type of event would have kept me down and beat me up for a very long time before. And it actually did at my first job that I quit. Not only because it was newer for me, but I had developed more relationships there, and so it was just a lot harder to leave that. And I talked about that in my video from several weeks back. I used to be a self-bigot. Quite a title, right? It's a very interesting video. Actually, a very important topic for me. But I was staking my self-worth on those relationships too much, and so it affected me a lot more deeply. But the same basic principle applied of not giving up your emotional state. And that's how I was after many months, like 9 months it took, I was able to finally make peace with this extremely painful situation. And I was able to cope and just accept the situation for what it is, take control of myself, and move on to a better place and become a stronger person. You know, it didn't work out, and that's okay. I don't need to be hurt. I don't need to be desperate and bitter. I can just move on and live a better life. You know, I'm able to go somewhere better. And it's like the quote by Thomas Edison. I don't know it off the top of my head, the exact quote, and there's a few versions of it anyway, but basically it's not so much about failure as much as it is finding new things that just don't work. And that's actually very powerful information to have, right? And I was able to take an extremely painful situation, and after quite a while, I was able to work through it, make peace with it, accept it for what it is, and move on without the negative emotions. And now I can use that painful experience to actually create a better life for myself now. And I'm in a much better place. That is how to cope. And so what I want to say is just getting mad, getting upset, it doesn't help me improve the situation. It doesn't help me heal, and it is totally possible to take control of your emotional state preemptively. And I'm still practicing, but it has served me so much. And I really hope that what I'm sharing today, you can apply to your life and help you in your own struggles. I couldn't have a thumbnail with a puppy and then not have a puppy in the video. Look how cute she is. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear your advice from your experiences in the comments. We're all growing together, and it's very appreciated. You can click subscribe and then the bell icon to be notified every time I post a video. I post every Friday. Feel free to share Philisol with anyone you think will find it helpful. I want to help as many people as I can. Check out the channel page for lots more videos and other channels that I really enjoy. Until next time, much love.